everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and we will discuss on the futuristic education. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. James Eve, Mr. Simon. I'm sure he will share a very good presentation with our audience. We have our world famous speaker, Mr. David Smith. First, I would like to give chance Mr. James Eve. Mr. James.
Yes, and our topic today is futuristic education. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah, I will take a back seat. I know that others have more elaborate presentations to make on this, but I think the future of education is something that society needs to pay more attention to, and we do not we have an educational system that's built around the agricultural system of the 19th century, and it is failing us. And we need to have a more an attitude that's different, completely different than the education system that I experienced. It doesn't prepare us for the modern world, and we need to have one that does. Thanks, Sharif, for the topic.
Thank you. Now I request Mr. Simon. He has a presentation for futuristic education. He is from South America.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sharif, for inviting me on the show, and I look forward to sharing some humble views of my thoughts on global education, which I developed a few years ago, and I'm going to share a small presentation. So I have various presentations on education, and I just wanted to say that that education is a key part in developing societies, also for the development of against poverty, political systems, supporting entrepreneurship, and doing various things in the educational sphere. So let me quickly turn off my notifications on a few Telegram things. So I really see education as a pillar for society, and which is important to facilitate like a society with reduced poverty, reduced crime, better health equity, and all the features that we want a society to have, that we actually want to live in. And I'll give a small presentation on a few thoughts that I have some years ago on education. So can everyone see my screen? Is my screen visible?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's sorry. Yes. I think now it's visible.
No.
So this was already a few. So this was a few years ago already, where we have the global economy has been fueled by 2 billion people essentially living in Western communities, doing the research and the educational parts of society. And so I was really thinking about how we can create a free digital education platform where we can empower the 4 billion new minds that are in Africa, Southeast Asia, and South America, get them online, educate them, and let them contribute their massive amounts of knowledge and brain power to further global society. So this was a presentation I gave to the Ministry of Education 3.5 years ago. So free global internet is on the way. This is a highly outdated article, since this presentation was 3.5 years ago, is that global internet is coming. And using India's model, where free tablets and internet connection is guaranteed to poor sections of the of society, it would be really nice to connect all of them to a global education network. And this is, for example, an advanced article by Huger et al., where it was where they looked at all of the features that an education platform should have, be it learning, cooperation, collaboration, learning management, adaptivity, and the standards and scoring. So these are all the features of a free, digital, ubiquitous education platform for all of society, for all of the world. These have already been created in the sense like we already know what an education platform should look like, and so there are also many other parts of an e-learning platform that have also been mapped out by this Chinese researcher Xu et al. That looked at all of the different features and indicators that educational platforms should have. And these are the different scoring indicators of how one would score an education platform on its efficiency. And this is also from Hughes et al. From the Chinese researcher back in 2009. And nowadays, so this is also outdated, but nowadays students even have access to advanced AI tools like GPT-4, GPT 3.5, Bard, and to really create these mashups where they get access to all kinds of free tools, be it YouTube, SlideShare, Twitter, free AI, presentation software, generative AI, and really create this mashup of an education platform. And this is how content would be structured on a meta level. So really, we already know how educational content should be structured in the content modules. So this has already been mapped out precisely in the past by various research groups. And again, this is how the content should be structured. And now I want to talk a little bit about how I see this working in practice. So the idea was to launch a free education platform for the impoverished regions of South America to help solve poverty and to help educate a billion new minds who can contribute enormously to the global economy and who are at the moment currently underrepresented. So I propose a free education platform for all of South America using the new tools of ubiquitous internet and ubiquitous computing and tablets and maybe even laptops, where people who use the education platform are tested on their IQ, and using true Napoleonic meritocracy, the top 1% of participants will get access to thousands of university courses, academic networks from Dutch universities, and after they've completed their masters or PhDs, will get access to seed venture funding for a private partner, public-private initiatives, so that they can launch their companies and do their innovation and really drive the local economies when they come back from their scholarship at key European universities. And the end result will be innovation, entrepreneurship, inclusive economic growth, and solving poverty. So, as we know, there is much poverty all over the world. So, not just in South America, but also in Africa and Southeast Asia. This is a picture of a slum in Brazil. And we really want to solve this as a society. We don't want anyone to live in such a place. And we want true inclusive economic growth where everyone benefits in society. So, using the model of free ubiquitous internet and free ubiquitous tablets will be given to all the impoverished regions in South America and connecting all of these new minds to the global brain. And there will be initial IQ testing of all participants to identify the true geniuses that are around. It might be very poor, it might not be online, might not be contributing to research, but who do have the mental horsepower to really make a huge impact. So just a remark. Einstein had a estimated IQ of 160, which made him 1 in 100,000. So that would mean that in a region as South America, there are literally hundreds of Einsteins walking around waiting to be discovered. And really, in true Napoleonic fashion, Napoleon was really the cheerleader for real meritocracy is to empower genius, to empower these people, even if they're poor, have no resources, whatever, to empower these geniuses and make them create very beautiful things. So giving the top 1% of participants access to Coursera, edX, and all of these education platforms, which have literally thousands of university courses available, which from engineering to AI to biotech. So really letting a person himself do a course which he himself would want to do, and letting him choose his educational journey. And like nowadays, there are all kinds of innovative tools like Chat GPT, GPT-4, which weren't available 3.5 years ago when I gave this presentation to the Aruba government. But I really foresee, like, after the top 1% of participants complete their course, they will get automatic scholarships to leading European-based universities where they can complete a master or a PhD program. And when they return to South America, hopefully they'll be given access to venture capital funds created through a private-public partnership of private VCs, private equity investors, and public funds, so that they can really start their companies, start their entrepreneurial journey, and create true inclusive economic growth. And hopefully, with this, alleviating the global phenomenon that is poverty. And that was my presentation in a nutshell. Thank you so much, everyone. And I hope that the people seeing this will be inspired, and that we can make a true impact. So that was, thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this presentation. And I will give the word over to the other speakers.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. David Smith, what you want to discuss about futuristic education?
Well, Dr. Sharif, thank you so much. And Simon, I enjoyed your presentation. I know some of the programs in South America, particularly some of them in Brazil, particularly around FGV, and some of the other universities there are really beginning to push the envelope going forward. And I liked your presentation. I was actually part of a pilot education program back in my youth, where we used original source materials for all of our studying. And every person in the class was either a valedictorian or salutatorian in their high school classes, and the professors came to us. But I actually, James, take a little bit different tack than you do on education. I say that our particularly higher education, but education in general, have not changed much since the time of Socrates. And we still use the Socratic method so much in what we do. And those of you who've heard me on these programs before know that I think the whole area has changed tremendously, because we see, like many industries have been disintegrated, I see education disintegrating as well. And, you know, if I go and look at classic K through 12, we're seeing dozens of different types of new structures happening, not only in the United States, but globally. As a driver from the pandemic, we see higher education finally beginning to change. We're seeing some of the walls knocked down. We're seeing collaboration, the concept of group intelligence happening in higher education. We also, though, are seeing an entire new industry of lifelong learning happening up. Education has to change from episodical education to lifelong learning education. And we're seeing that through boot camps. We're seeing that through so many different ways to make things happen and move it. We're also seeing it through the growth of things in targeted areas. We talk often on this program about entrepreneurship. And we're seeing the classical views of healthy entrepreneurship changing from the times of a business incubator that was mostly selling office space and services to one where education has become a key part of it. And some of the things that we have to really do as we look at education changes is we have to understand education has to be global now. We have to teach how to communicate at a distance. We have to teach collaboration. We have to teach how to use group intelligence. We really need to understand that even the human capital that education is teaching has changed. And we've got to understand that. You know, we look at a work environment today where we have 5 generations in the workforce all at the same time. The way each of those generations learns is different. The way each of those generations communicate is different. And we have to begin to look at ways to understand that. We, as many of you heard me say way too often, we live in a time of systems of systems. And everything today is a system of systems. They're connected, they're digital, and they're, because they are a system of systems, they're very dynamic. Systems, dynamic systems, linear, the whole concept of wicked problems and others has to be incorporated into our futuristic education processes. We cannot teach today how we taught 20 years ago. It will not work today. And we have to begin to make those changes. People on this have also heard me say that education is no longer about a point on a map. It's where you find the competencies and capabilities, and yes, training and skills to get the job done. And we have to bring those same capabilities into our future education process. Finally, the rule of the master information provider is over. We have so many tools today that can make information so broadly available. The role of the leader in education is just that it's a leader and not the holder of all knowledge. And that has to change as well. And through looking at the things like the boot camps, the other tools we have to do very short, intensive learning. I can tell you, all of my developers and my different companies, I encourage them to do web-based learning all the time, to involved in these, and to go and learn skills as they need them to enhance them to come up. I can tell you for most of my developers, what they learned in college, and not all of them have gone to college anymore, it is so outdated they can use very little of it today. So yes, does education need to change? 1,000%. As a professional futurist, I have deeper views on the future side of it, but I've given you a lot of my vision of where I think it can change and how it needs to change and where it needs to go. So Sharif, I probably said too much on the vision side, and let me pass it back to you.
Thank you. Now I request Mr. Robin Daly.
Hi, good morning. I'm still recovering a little bit, so excuse me if I lose my voice through any part of this. My view on the future of education really has to do with the process of improving education over time. As David pointed out, one of the problems we've got right now is a lot of times the folks that are coming out of school are ill prepared for the jobs that face them after they graduate. In fact, from anecdotally, what I'm hearing from the marketplace is the latest generation of kids are less employable by far than prior generations. The turnover rate is extremely high. They have short attention spans. They seem disinterested in work. They don't seem to want to engage. A lot of us are blaming it on the pandemic, but the fact of the matter is education has been decoupled from jobs for an awful long period of time. There's no feedback loop that I'm aware of where we look at the kids after they've gone into the workplace, how they've interrelated with their coworkers and the companies, and then use that information to improve the education process so we get an improvement loop over time. And if we're talking about any process, generally a process should have some type of feedback loop so that you can improve the process over time. And yet we don't do that. We tend to do education by rote. Whatever was done in the past is what we're going to do going forward. And whatever was good for my grandparents is good enough for us, and off we go. And very little connection between the quality of life the student's going to have after school and what they're taught in school. Even the things that I was taught in school apparently are not taught anymore in education. Simple things like how to cook a meal. It's not broadly taught. And so we have a lot of problems with kids boomeranging back to their parents, unable to even live on their own after they've left school and the prepared meals of whatever living relationship arrangement they had while they were in school. To me, the first fix is to figure out a way to create a feedback loop, a way to assess the kids that are coming into the workforce, and then use that assessment to improve the training that they got in school, and really create a certain amount of breadth. And now, part of our issue is engagement. Kids have an awful lot of distractions that certainly I didn't have as a kid. I mean, I didn't have a smartphone, a tablet, a PC. I didn't have the World Wide Web. I didn't have generative AI, obviously, though I would have loved to have had that when I was growing up. And so there are just a lot of distractions that kids have, both in and out of the classroom, that make it very difficult for them to perform. And perhaps one of the first things we should be looking at is teaching kids how to focus and how to put aside distractions, not by force, because force rarely works. You tell a kid they can't do something, the first thing they want to do is the very thing you told them not to do. It's our rebellious phase. I think we all went through that on our teens. You have to teach them the benefits of focus and let them come to the conclusion on their own, and then advance with their own support. If you try to do it by fiat and by direction, at least it's been my experience, that rarely works well. If somebody is very motivated and focused, then certainly that helps a bit. But if they're not, it doesn't fix the problem to execute by force. And so you really have to embrace the student, engage them, make education interesting. And I do know in my own upbringing, the things that I found most interesting was when I was allowed to apply what it was I learned to solve a problem that I could see it was visible. And once I could do that, then things made sense to me. Then suddenly it wasn't just somebody telling me about a history story about somebody that's long dead and I could care less about. It's about learning how to live life, learning something from that history story that could make me a better person, or put it differently, not so much make me a better person, but make me happier in what was to come. A lot of unhappiness often comes from a lack of control, a lack of understanding. And if we can connect students in their own heads between the knowledge we provide and then the later understanding and we'll use a better term, self-realization that occurs when you kind of understand what's going on around you, and then you can affect change on those things around you. You don't always appear to be or perceive to be a terminal victim. And that's really what I think that I'm talking about here. Is often when you live in an environment where people are constantly telling you what to do, but not really letting you learn why you should do that, then you always feel the victim. The society is forcing you down a particular path, or your parents are forcing you down a particular path, but you have no idea what path you should be on. And so you have no guidance in terms of how to guide your own life, and you're upset that people are telling you what to do, but you have no idea what you should do. And that's the kind of problem that I think education should be directly addressing, and seems unable to. Now, part of the problem is span of control. Classes tend to be very large. Teachers can't focus on individual students, and that makes it very hard for a curriculum to adjust itself for the different needs of every individual student. Yet we have that capability now. One of the things generative AI does provide is it provides a certain amount of flexibility in terms of the curriculum, so that the proper instruction can be applied and oversight can be applied to the individual student that needs it. A student that is as Simon pointed out, is a genius, probably doesn't need as much mathematical training and fundamental training in science as perhaps somebody that is less inclined. On the other hand, A genius may need much more in terms of interpersonal skills. They may need to learn how to relate with others, how to collaborate. A lot of the folks that I've known over the years and I've worked with that were certified geniuses were absolutely horrible to work with, and nobody wanted to hang around them. I remember one of the founders of Netscape going way back. They had to put people around him so he never actually interfaced with anybody because he was just so bad with people. Well, that was something that he should have been taught because it made him relatively ineffective. He wasn't able to apply the genius, and of course, that was one of the reasons that Netscape failed and failed spectacularly. So in the end, we need a way to mold education to better match the individual students' needs. We need to be able to assess the students on a regular basis. We need to apply education against the individual needs of the students, keep them engaged, and we need a feedback loop so that when kids come out of education and they go into business and they bounce or they're successful, that information flows back into education so that things that are working are enhanced and things that aren't working are discontinued, rather than just doing the same thing over and over again. I remember that was the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. That's kind of how education works. We do the same thing over and over again. We focus people on degrees. We focus people on things that have really no meaning to the job other than getting the job, and not on the important things like collaboration, like doing your own research. Generative AI has a huge amount of potential to do both harm and good. Harm, it is a huge cheating tool. I mean, just a massive cheating tool. And if kids use it for cheating, they won't learn the underlying methods and messages that they need to learn. But on the other hand, it is also a force multiplier. And if they learn how to use it right, it can make them far more effective than their predecessors and peers. And the real goal needs to be to help them understand that doing this right is much more beneficial for them long term than using it for cheating. I'm surprised we don't actually teach students what happens to the kids that cheat themselves through school. The various stories I've had of people that made it all the way to CEO before they're found out, and then they're unemployed and unemployable. And there's one thing worse than being in poverty, and that's having experienced wealth and then being in poverty. That's the level of embarrassment, the level of depression. It's for many, they never overcome it. The basic importance of building a solid foundation, and then as you progress, assuring the strength of that foundation as you move forward, as opposed to building a house of cards, always being afraid that somebody's going to find out that you're a fraud. And then when it happens, having the disaster that occurs and that it becomes unrecoverable. Teaching kids early on, not that cheating is something that should be avoided because it's bad, but cheating is something that should be avoided because it will destroy your life. It does not lead to a happy outcome. These are the kinds of things schools should be teaching and do not. The proper use of tools. How to use a tool as a force multiplier, but not use a tool to cheat, so you don't learn the lessons that need to be learned, and so you don't understand how to properly apply the tool when it needs to be applied. That's where education, I think, lets us down, and I think it could be fixed if we just if we just created a feedback loop that carried off into business and used that feedback loop to improve education over time. That one thing would do wonders, but just assuring that kids, the goal isn't to get a degree. The goal is to make a better person. And until we focus education on helping people become better, I'm afraid it simply becomes another monetary goal to bring in students, make money off them as they go through, and they get a degree and then care less about them as they come out the back end. That's just not the way to do things. The goal has to be to build better people. And until we can bring our minds around that and focus education on that particular goal, I doubt we're going to be able to make the progress that we need to make. And right now, at least from my observation, things are going in the wrong direction. The latest students are not performing well in the world environment. And sadly, I'm not really seeing anybody stepping up to make the necessary fix. And generative AI, as good as it is, it could do a tremendous amount of damage here if we don't focus it on the right things.
Thank you.
I'll pass to
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Rob. Yeah. Now I request Mr. Ching.
Okay, I have a completely different view from the establishment. Okay, and I speak from the point of view of life science, which is the age of life science is about 1,000 years ahead of today's science. Okay, the basic principle of education, okay, is reason or memorization. Okay, either you teach a student to reason or you teach them to memorize. Okay, and reason is forward looking, memorizing backward looking. Similarly, pole science is forward looking, science is backward looking. Okay, let me give you a simple example of what I mean by memorization. Okay, you know, if you have a kid, you send it to kindergarten, the first thing he would learn is to learn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, writing those words. Most likely it's in Arabic language, Arabic numeral. Okay, they call it numerals. Okay, first thing I object to that. Okay, you send the young kids and immediately they try to brainwash you. Okay, we must get rid of this Arabic numeral. Okay, that's what I mean by reason versus memorization. No memorization from the start. Okay, the habit of memorizing has to be eliminated. Okay, it took me a long time to, my own experiences after I finished my formal education until postdoc at the Quran Institute, from MIT to Quran Institute. After that, I just go search for my own mentors. Okay, which contradict to David's idea of Socratic, you know, Socrates' idea of teaching. You know, during those times, during Socrates' time, it's mentorship. It's not mass education as we have today. Okay, so I identified 10 most advanced thinkers for the world, and they're still the most advanced thinker in my opinion. Okay, but their ideas not accepted, you know, because we have formal education and nobody allowed to teach what is not accepted by the establishment. Okay, so basically the basic principle is reason versus memorization. Okay, I'm very much against even Arabic numeral. Okay, you get into school, you immediately start to memorize. Okay, how do you replace that? Okay, the way to replace that is eliminate all memorization in computer usage or in education. Eliminate all of it. You say to do it, you need to have complete automated software. Complete automated software basically eliminate all the technical barrier to computer usage. We're talking about age of life science. We're not talking about today's world. Today's everything is partially automated. No, nothing is completely automated. You see, we cannot change old people, so we have to look into education of the young people. Okay. And the way to do it, it's not easy, but it can be carried out very easily. Okay. So far, I have been discussing this with people in Taiwan. I hope we can also carry this into Bangladesh, you know, because in Bangladesh, education is one of the top priorities of the country. And they need to do that because it got a lot of people, but no money. Okay. Well, you need to raise the cultural standard of the kids. Actually, you know, what I'm saying, if the goal of education is to raise the cultural standard. Okay. So what we need to satisfy in this education is to have the educational system permanent and universal. So it's called the universal permanent education. Okay. Whatever a kid start to learn from the age 6 when they enter into school, They will be still using the same method when they're the whole life until 60, 80, 100. Okay, the way to do is this. They must replace the Arabic numeral, okay, with a numeral system I invented. Okay, it's not really an invention. It just use the binary system. The binary system is a logical number system. Okay, the only logical number system. So what you do is you turn the binary system 90 degrees. Then it corresponds to I Ching numeral. Okay, I Ching is one of the most popular book in the world. Okay, similar to the Bible in the West. Okay, and that system has a numeral which is logical and efficient. It's broad characters. You cannot type on the typewriter, but we need to change that. Okay, it's a block numeral, and the learning that is by reason, not by memorization. Just like you learn the binary system, it's all by reason. Okay, you start with reason, then that system will connect to my universal permanent software. Okay, once you connect to universal permanent software, the software will lead you to any knowledge you want without memorization. Okay, and there is only one way to communicate with machine. Okay, the machine must use integers. Okay, machine's native language is integer. Okay, human native language are human languages. But you must allow machines to speak in integers. And also you need to make this complete automated. So the computer, the system itself must be able to self-generate. It's pretty much like a living system. Okay, actually it identifies DNA as a complete automated software. So it fit into nature's most fundamental idea of life science. Okay, and this is a complete system. We already start. This is 1,000 years ahead of current science. But in post science, I have already gone about 4,000 years ahead. I've gone to robotics and self-creation and the fuzzy logic. You see, this to us, we have thought through this whole thing from beginning to the end. And if a country like Taiwan or Bangladesh start to use this system, they can also simultaneously promote the complete automated software, which I have already developed. I can demonstrate and I can make it self-generate to infinity. So basically, this system has been quite well set, and in the future, people can export this complete automated universal permanent education system. There's nobody can. I don't think anybody can compete against such a system. Okay, this is from the future. Today, all this system partially automated, not universal. You can introduce everything. A kid can go to Chat GPT. If they want to, they go to AI. They pick what they want to learn. That's very easy. Okay, this system, you just make multiple choices. You go to that place and it will give it to you, and you can remember it. Complete automated software, eliminate all the technology. You don't need to remember anything. Okay, everything is based on reason. So society has to recognize this. Okay, we call memorization. That's a very friendly term. In actuality, it is brainwashing. Okay, you force somebody to memorize something, you're forcing him to brainwashing. This brainwashing is the great impedance to education. Okay, people do not do critical thinking. They just follow the establishment. A lot of brainwashing, and whatever happened in the past will carry over into the future. And the world cannot go into the future because, mainly because they refuse to accept. They are unable to calculate the future consequences. So, in pole science, we solve the problem value, which is basically calculate the future or the expected future to infinity and make it deterministic. So that's about 500 years ahead. It's the next age is age of social science. After that, the age of life science. Life science, the solution value is only 50 variable. Solution complete automation, you have to consider about 500 variable. But that's all right. We work everything out, and the implementation is very simple. So if Bangladesh is willing to implement, we're willing to provide it totally free. And this is, to us, is not the most advanced stuff. So we're quite experienced in doing this. And this is a good
Thank you, Mr. Chen.
project. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. James, what's your concluding remarks and what's your advice for emerging economy for develop futuristic education system and process?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to be on the program and to talk about this great subject. And I've really enjoyed listening to my colleagues. And I wanted to say that, we have to be clear about what we're educating, because we have to consider cultural aspects as well. I don't know if the Greco-Roman educational system is what we want to provide for everyone throughout the world. I trained myself when I was young and on a lot of things. And I studied European intellectual history because that's what Adams and Jefferson studied. And I wanted to know what they knew in order to construct the democracy that we live in today in the United States. And, I don't know if that's appropriate for everyone. And but it was appropriate for me growing up in New England. And besides getting clear, I love the focus on reason, because what we need to do, this is why I advocated chess in education, and many schools have adopted it because chess teaches you to focus. It teaches you to reason. It teaches you to problem solve. It teaches you to plan. And not very many subjects do this, and it does some of the discipline and creativity that advanced mathematics and music also does. But we don't teach chess in the schools until recently. And people's performance, they've studied it, their performance has increased. And why? Because, I gave a talk at a local Rotarian, and they asked me about video games. And I said, that's the enemy, man. The kids are on there and all they're doing is getting big thumbs. And it's the applications and the phones that they're on. Their attention is never focused. And this is what I think Rob was talking about. This, they go into the job market and they experience their lack of focus is not useful. It's not employable. And the ability to focus. And my father taught me don't wait to be taught. Teach yourself. And so we're all advocating, all the resources that are out there in the web. I didn't have them when I was growing up. We had books. And so now you have many more opportunities to teach yourself. And that is what I would advocate. Yes, it's great to have these structures in place that provide you an educational system. If that is what you want, to choose that educational system. Or if you want to piece together your own, which is what I did. You can do it. It's up to you, the individual, to do it. And so the resources are out there. Our educational system has to be able to about empowering people to create their own education. And the ability to reason has to be at the basis of it, because you have to learn to learn. Most people now have multiple careers, and they have to learn again and again and again throughout their lifespan, their working professional lifespan, to do new things. And there will be many more new things coming at us. And we're going to have to learn how to cope, how to function, and how to adapt. Thank you, Sharif. I must leave now, but it was a very instructive and productive session for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Simon, what's your concluding remarks and how we can improve together?
I'm sorry. So, what was the question?
My question is that how we can improve the emerging economy education system, and what's the concluding remarks for today?
So I really see personalized education. So where in a utopic world, every single student would have their own human tutor, but that's not possible. So what you would do in a classroom of, let's say, 30 people is to assign everyone a personalized AI mentor tutor, which, for example, would allow students to learn at their own pace, at the topics that they want to, in a highly personalized fashion. And so I see the role of personalized AI in education, functioning as tutors for everyone. Let's say, for example, I'm not so good at Spanish. I need extra tutoring in Spanish, but I was always good in biology and math, so I need less tutoring there. And I would get extra assignments in math and biology, really, trying to push me harder in the topics where I can perform, and give me extra tutoring in the topics where I don't perform. I do feel we have to democratize education and not keep it something for, sorry to say, but only for rich white people, but also for all of the impoverished people all over the globe, really giving them access to these advanced tools, and unlocking genius that is just out there, that is in Bangladesh, that is in Brazil, that is in other impoverished communities in Africa, Senegal, and hopefully empowering genius all over the globe and letting them contribute to global society. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Now I request Professor David Smith, what's your concluding remarks for today's session?
Dr. Sharif, like the others, I thank you so much for letting me be part of this. As you can tell, education's another one of my passions, and I believe strongly in it. My concluding remarks, I'll just keep really simple. Please understand that the future of education is going to be around lifelong learning, and lifelong learning must be the key to being successful in it. The second point really is that we need to teach that the half-life of knowledge that we're learning in education is very short, and that we have to continually go ahead and test our assumptions, well, as we go. We really need to understand the differences in each other, and understand that we all learn different ways, we all communicate differently, and build those into the education process. And finally, education and sharing our education and mentoring others is what advances the world much more rapidly. So the future of education is doing all these things, and doing them not just on a local basis, but on a regional, national, and global basis as well. So Sharif, thank you for letting me be part of this.
Thank you. Now I request Mr. Rob.
Well, we have a great potential to change education. Generative AI has a capability to make course material far more interesting and far more capable. In fact, I'm just finishing a report out of Stanford where they're using a tool called Tome, T-O-M-E. And this tool is fascinating. It allows a professor to create much richer course material. For instance, the example is given. A professor wanting to give a class on an ancient Roman speech can use this tool to show what went into the speech to begin with, how the speech affected the people that heard it, and even use it to generate animation to show what the speech might have looked like when it occurred. So the student is brought into the teaching material. They're not just simply being told about it. They're not being told to memorize it. they're being told what the speech meant. They're given skills on how to create a speech or how a speech might have been created at that particular point in time, and they're taken back in time to see what the world might have looked back when the speech was delivered, making for a far richer experience, far more interesting experience than just having to read and then regurgitate a textbook without any connection to real life. Generative AI can draw a student into a particular course of material and show them kind of how things interrelate, how things work, how their input could affect change in the world around them in the future. That's how tools like generative AI should be used, not just as a way to fast write papers. In fact, I would argue that perhaps at this particular point in time, paper writing as a practice probably should be discouraged in favor of richer forms of presentation. In other words, using the full power of the tool rather than just to fast generate a paper, to create a multimedia presentation showcasing the student understands the material and how that material interrelates to the world around them. Generative AI can do that, and tools like Tome are stepping up to that particular challenge. But this will only work if we focus on making the student better. If we step away from goals of accomplishing a particular course of material and really put the impetus back on creating goals that drive students to become better, more capable people, and then creating a feedback loop to assure that what we're doing is having a positive impact and improving the overall cycle over time. Until we do that, we're still going to be faced with the fact that people just don't like change, and the older we are, the less change that we like. And unfortunately, most of our professors are old and really don't like change. And changing that dynamic in a world where change is very rapid and where students are going to face a world very different than the world they went into school with. In other words, the world that their parents have is not the world that they're going to be entering when they enter the workforce. They need to be prepared for the world the way it will be, not the way the world was. And helping education come around to the idea that it needs to change and evolve just as quickly as the world around it evolves probably is the most important thing we can do at this time. And that ends my closing comments.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Rob. Now I request Mr. Ching.
Well, I think, there's not much to talk about except let's do it, you see. My suggestion is, try to work with the Taiwan government. I know the president, and also since we're talking Bangladesh, let's get the Bangladesh coming, because Bangladesh is way behind everything else, except they have a lot of people, and the people need education. So that's a good choice of two places. I can hook up with the two countries, your leader and the Taiwan leader. And the one country is very high in technology. The other country got a lot of human power. Okay, people are the resource of innovation. So we got to develop this, So what we are really facing with is brainwashing versus critical thinking. Okay, people are not doing critical thinking. You see, people just say, "Oh, what happened in the past? What happened in the past?" Okay, where you got this information? They're all brainwashing. So at least you have a choice to see which things you want to be brainwashed by. Okay, and we must also notice, for Bangladesh and for Taiwan, is that the education system should become a product. Okay, Simon seems to be into that area. Simon should look into that area. It's a product. It's a competitive product. People must compete, and the best system will be picked. Okay, let's present a few best systems. So here I have a complete system. Also quite well developed. And there's some additional benefit in this, immediate benefit in universal permanent education. But the student will immediately learn complete automated software. Okay, the complete automated software has been demonstrated to the patent office. Okay, the guy, who examined this, his name is Richard Ellis, and this Richard Ellis is the biggest real estate company in the world. So Richard Ellis immediately approve the patent, okay, because there's demonstration showed to him. And then they will also learn about DNA. DNA is using the complete automated software to program with the source code 0123, which they call ACGGT, but it's actually 0123. And the life science should be defined as the programming and documentation of DNA. There's not much else to life science. And they don't know how to define life science. Okay. So they will immediately learn programming because they are using a complete automated software. And also, most important, they will self-educate. Like, Rob, David, or both seem to see the importance in self-education. In my case, is after I did my postdoc training, I immediately start to identify, to pick my own mentors, pick my teachers. So there's a problem with me. I graduated from MIT. There's a problem for me. At MIT, I identify. In undergrad school, I say the circuit theory and the field theory are redundant. Okay, they talk about the same thing. Okay, and this should be pointed out to students. Okay, obvious the field theory is more basic. Circuit theory just lump up the system. Okay, this thing should be pointed out. And now, after I graduated from MIT, I have no association with any engineer at MIT. Okay, because these engineers, they treat science as a religion. They just take science equation from science as a religion doctrine and plug in things and start to do things. Okay, so it's very nice. It says that I really do not belong to MIT. Okay, I got all my degrees from MIT, but I do not belong to it. And I came over here to UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley I have 4 mentors from UC Berkeley. So UC Berkeley is a school where they accept professors who are rejected by all the other institutes. They are rebels. So they start to, the rebels, all got into UC Berkeley. And these rebels are the people like Paul Feyerabend. He wrote a book against method. The method, what method? The method is the scientific method. Okay, he's the #1 professor at the UC Berkeley. Then there's Gerald de Brue. Gerald de Brue is the person who insists on going to infinity in value theory. Then there's the fuzzy logic, the most advanced thinker in history, Lofty Sadeh. And also Ramosi, C.V. Ramosi, who invented the von Neumann syndrome. He thinks the von Neumann architecture is incorrect, needs to be updated. So all these rebels, I pick them, and I pick all the others like Milton Friedman, who's not in the mainstream of economics, but he is actually leading the economic thinking. So all these rebels, I picked, and I have nothing to do with MIT, which is interesting. Okay, today I thinking back, I say this probably is a good experience to learn something which you will not learn otherwise. Okay, so I was forced into MIT because my father wanted one of his sons to go to MIT. So basically, this is what I would say. David's idea using mentors, mentorship. Just go find your own teachers. Okay, so if you have a universal permanent education, you have a system, you just put anything you want to learn. Okay, without memorization, because the computer will help you memorize everything. Through this, the process is through human associative memory. Associative memory allows people to access unlimited amount of information. Okay, it's all in my patent, so you can check, Hughton patent, and you find the complete automated and self-generating software system. Okay, this can be carried over into a education system. And there are many other things one can learn. You see. And that's, all worked out. Okay. Sharif, I will ask you to help me to get in touch with your prime minister so I can introduce President Tsai of Taiwan to her, and they can do lots of good exchange. It's very, very interesting. One country is technical, the other is really need this high tech support.
I really agree with Dr. Ching about let's just do it. Let's just make it happen and
Yes.
take the next step. Yes.
Yeah, I think your system should be presented and as a product. So we have let people choose. Okay, and also Dave and Rob, you're so passionate about this, and just set up your complete system. Let's get out and compete. Okay. So this competition, it's no losers, because your system will be pick up some people. Some people will just go to your system and use it. You see, my system happened to be a one that without any memorization, so it has some significant advancement due to the very drastic innovation. It's a breakthrough. Elimination of all the technical barrier to computer usage. Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
my.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session. This is really interesting session. World Talent Economy Forums, we are developing business incubations with different people and with the different countries, and definitely all of your support and advice and guideline will be helpful for our audience. Especially, we are working with emerging economies entrepreneurs, so futuristic education definitely important for us. And yeah, we are working with the Prime Minister Office of Bangladesh in India. We are working with the Invest India, BIDA, Prime Minister Office of Malaysia, because we want to engage with more people so they have the ability to help us to support the grassroots level peoples. So thank you, Mr. Simon. We want to invite you all in Bangladesh this coming February. Thank you, Mr. David Smith. Thank you, Mr. Rob. And thank you, Mr. Ching, for joining today's sessions. Thank you. Bye-bye. And
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, Sharif, thank you for inviting